Hi, seventh grade. Welcome back from spring break. I hope you guys had a nice time away from school, even though the weather wasn't great. Hopefully, you had some time to just relax and not have to worry about, getting assignments done. Um, I know that you're aware, but for the second part of this online learning experience, we're going to be splitting up, and I will be teaching science on Wednesdays or Mondays and Wednesdays. So I've moved my office hours to Monday and Wednesday at 11:45. We will typically have our Zoom sessions um, on Wednesdays. I will do course 2 at 1 and course 3 at 1:30. But this week we are not doing a Zoom session, just going forward. That is my plan. The other thing I want to say is in terms of assessments, I'm not planning on having any more large whole chapter tests. I think we're just going to go with the open book, open note section quizzes, and those will be our assessment grades for the remainder of the year as long as we are online. I'm also going to be incorporating some Edpuzzle embedded questions. Those will count for classwork grades, but I don't think I'm going to do any large chapter tests anymore. We're also going to try to go through as much of the remaining material as we can. I'm going to skip over the periodic table and do that with you guys next year when we're in person. And so what I want to cover with you today is we're going to start on the atmosphere, and then we'll move into weather. And hopefully at the very end, we can get just touch on the moon and the sun, the earth, moon, and sun, which is the final chapter. So it might seem like I'm going quickly. I'm trying to just touch on a lot of things so that you're familiar with it. Um, all right, so let me start with section 11.1. I'm just going to go through my highlights and let you know what I've highlighted and kind of what the main points of this section are. So let me find you. That's faculty, junior high. There you guys are. All right, so section 11.1 starts just basically giving you general information on the composition of the Earth's atmosphere. And so when we're talking about the atmosphere, we're talking about the envelope of gases that are surrounding Earth, and they're actually held to Earth by the force of gravity. So just like you and I are held to Earth by the force of gravity, those gases that envelop the Earth and form the atmosphere are also held in place by the force of gravity. Um, Earth's atmosphere, this atmosphere that envelops us, is going to be comprised of gas, of water vapor, which is different from steam. Water vapor is truly water in a gas form. Steam is just very tiny water particles suspended in air, um, as well as other dust and other particles that are in the air. The majority, so let's click to the next page. So here they break down and they show you what are the gases that are that comprise the atmosphere. And so the largest, or the gas that makes up the most of the atmosphere, is nitrogen. Nitrogen makes up about 78% of the atmosphere. Your book says a little more than 3/4, and it's actually more accurately around 78%. We also have nitrogen in us. If you remember, we need nitrogen to survive. However, the nitrogen that's in the air, we're not able to use. So if you think back, I think this might have been something that Mrs. Novak should have covered with you. Um, but the nitrogen that is in the air, our bodies cannot ingest in that form. And so what has to happen is that nitrogen in the air has to go through a process in the ground through nitrogen fixing bacteria, which are found on the roots of like legumes. And it's that those nitrogen fixing bacteria that get the nitrogen from the air and convert it into a form that we can use and ultimately ingest through plants. And so plants are the way that we get nitrogen that we need, not from the air. We either get the nitrogen if we eat the plant directly or if we eat an animal that has eaten that plant. But we get nitrogen from what we eat. We do not breathe nitrogen in, even though it makes up such a large part of the atmosphere. The next most abundant gas would be oxygen, and that's about 21%. Obviously, you know oxygen is what we breathe. We also need oxygen for cellular respiration. Another thing you guys should have covered, actually, we covered it with the photosynthesis cellular respiration chapter, but remember, oxygen is important for us to be able to use when we take that food and break it down into energy that we can use. Um, a byproduct of that process is carbon dioxide. And so if you remember back to cellular respiration, we breathe in oxygen, we use that oxygen to convert glucose into a form that we can use. And when we breathe out, one of the byproducts, one of the things we release from cellular respiration is carbon dioxide. Now, carbon dioxide actually, according to your book, makes up less than 1% of the atmosphere. So compared to oxygen, there's far more oxygen in our atmosphere than carbon dioxide, but it's a delicate balance. And that's something that we'll get into with pollution. But you have to be careful because we put carbon dioxide back into the atmosphere when we breathe out. But burning of fossil fuels also puts carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. And so you have to maintain the delicate balance that there is with the gases in the air in order for the atmosphere and the earth to have what it needs to sustain life. So remember, carbon dioxide is important for plants. They use that carbon dioxide in the process of photosynthesis to take energy from the sun and create glucose, which is the sugar then that we ingest when we take in plants and animals. So carbon dioxide is important for plants to have in order for them to be able to perform the process of photosynthesis. And likewise, a byproduct of photosynthesis is oxygen, which we ingest, and then we um, give off carbon dioxide after cellular respiration. Some of this should sound familiar from what we covered in chapter 3. The other gas that they talk about beyond carbon dioxide at less than 1% would be argon. So carbon dioxide, if you look down here, right, here's our key. They want you to pick which one actually represents how the gases are distributed in the atmosphere, and it's this middle one. So I want you to make sure when you do your book, you color it in. This is showing us Earth's atmosphere with nitrogen comprising the majority in blue. And then we have oxygen here. This is roughly 20%, 21%. And this other gases is purple. And so this other gases is primarily going to be argon and then carbon dioxide. I would say are the two main gases that are in this other gases area. All right. Moving on. Water vapor. Your book, like I said before, your book makes a point of telling you, and it's important to understand, water vapor is different from steam. So when you think of steam, steam is actually little droplets of water that are suspended in the air. Water vapor is truly water in a gas form. All right, so it's two different things. And then it talks about here that this cycling of water in the atmosphere is going to play a very important role in how our weather forms and our weather patterns. They also go on to describe what clouds are. So clouds are going to form when this water vapor condenses out of air and it goes back into that tiny droplet of water, almost like steam, like it is when it's in steam. But when you form clouds, those little droplets of air oftentimes collect dust particles, they crystallize, and eventually they are suspended in air as clouds until they become too heavy, and then they fall to the earth as rain and snow. It says also here, one other thing that we have to consider that's in our air, and we don't really always think about this, but while pure air contains only gases, that really only exists in laboratories. So if you think about it, when we're out in the world or even in your home breathing air, there's other things that are in the air other than just the gases that make up the air or water vapor. You also have tiny particles of dust, you have some smoke, you have salt that's in there, you also have chemicals. So it's sometimes on a sunny day, depending on how the light's coming through the window, sometimes you can see dust that's suspended in the air. But most of the time, these particles are so small that we don't really see them. We can't really know that they're there, but they are there and we are breathing them in. And the last part that your book talks about in this section is just the fact that the atmosphere itself is a system. And furthermore, and we'll get into this more next year, but the atmosphere is really part of a larger Earth system. So there's different systems on Earth. You have water systems, you have the atmosphere, you have land systems or the geosphere. Um, there's another one. The hydrosphere is the water, the geosphere is the land, the atmosphere is the air, and there's one more, and I can't remember it off the top of my head. But the point is, all of these spheres on Earth interact with one another in a system, in a way in which they influence each other to end up in a result. And the same is true of the atmosphere in general. The atmosphere combines the different layers of air, as we'll get to in later sections. It also combines pressure, like how that air pressure interacts with each other. It also talks about how the atmosphere interacts with the ocean to create weather, and they talk about that down here with the whole notion of a hurricane. So again, I wanted to reiterate what a system is. So a system is just going to be a group of related parts that work together, and those related parts either perform a function or produce a result. And so when you think of the atmosphere is a system in and of itself, but it also is part of a larger system of just how the Earth operates. All right, so that is the end of 11.1. I want you to make sure that you've completed the Edpuzzle questions. I'm going to give you a classwork grade on that, and then I'm going to post one other video for today, the first half of 11.2. But please make sure that you go through your book. I've posted these pictures. Make sure you have what you need to have highlighted and you've noted what you have to have noted so that when we have our open note quiz, you'll do really well on it. All right? I hope you guys are doing well, and I will see you soon. Bye.